Forget to. Okay. I have done that before with like, and missed like, I've done it twice and missed like the first like third of the show. I'm like,
no.
it's okay. I mean, it's
So
recorded
frustrating.
for, it's the audio is recorded, obviously, because Voice America does that for me. But for the video portion, I'm like, yeah. And I always have a note that says record right there in my face.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so we
great.
have Voice America. Hi, who do we have today?
Hi, good morning. This is Matt. How you doing?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
It's nice to hear.
All right. All right. So you're sounding good, I think, loud and clear. But go ahead. I'm going to get a level check. Go ahead and count backwards from 5 for me.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Sounding great. And Lisa, hello. How you doing today?
Great. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. All right. Do the same for me. Just go ahead and count back from
Yeah.
5.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. And are you just using the internal mic on your computer or webcam?
I have my Bluetooth earbuds in.
Earbuds. Okay.
Yep. So they're connecting to that computer mic.
All right, sounds good. All right. Excellent. I sent a hello over in the chat. Did that come through to you?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
All right. Good, good. Then we're
And Matt,
all
we'll do
Yeah.
we'll do 2 breaks today.
2 breaks. All right.
Yeah.
All right, well, we are good to go. We've got a little less than 2 minutes, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Wonderful.
And he'll let me know when we go to break, so you can ignore the chat if you like. And if I have to interrupt you, you'll know that's why I'm interrupting. But if it's a soft break so if we're in a really good, juicy bit of conversation, we're just aware of the time and we don't have to cut you off like right midstream. But we do have to end on time because they will cut us off.
I believe it. Perfect.
Yeah. And just so you know, I always do a little bit of a drop in before I introduce you, just to get everyone connected to
Awesome.
their bodies.
Awesome. Wonderful.
All right, we have about 20 seconds and we'll get started.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, here we go. Have a good show.
Thank you.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
Welcome, everyone, to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I'm your host, Lynsie McKeown, and we're here on Voice America's Empowerment Channel. And today we are going to be talking about ancestral foods, intuitive eating, and banishing diet culture. Can you imagine what that would be like if we banished the diet culture? Ooh, that's a big one. So I want to ask you this question, like, do you feel deeply nourished, like at a deep cellular level with your whole being? Now, if you don't, you're definitely going to want to have stay tuned for this conversation, because we're going to be diving into what true wellness means, what really getting deeply nourished means. And we'll be covering topics ranging from intuitive eating, stress reduction, and how to listen to your body's cues and clues as to what it really needs to be nourished, and the importance of what we eat and how we eat it. So before I introduce our amazing guest today, I want to do what we always do, is just take this moment to stop, pause, and breathe. So if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, do that. And just take a moment to feel into your body, moving our attention from the busyness of the outer world into this place within us that holds such wisdom. And just feel into your body in this moment. Do you feel deeply nourished? And then take a couple deep, full breaths into the belly. Send some nourishing breath down into the belly. And what do you need to feel deeply nourished in this moment? And trusting that there is a wisdom within you that can guide you to the nourishment that you need. Another deep breath in and out. Okay, my friends. So let's go ahead and come back so we can introduce Lynsie Mase, who is an incredible woman who has over 15 years of experience being a holistic nutritionist, an herbalist, a wellness educator, and a food sovereignty activist. Now, she's trained in the wisdoms of and traditions of European herbalism, Ayurveda, macrobiotics, mindful intuitive eating, and Chinese five-element theory so that she can offer a comprehensive and a universal view of health. And Lynsie migrated from Italy when she was a teen, and she's going to talk a little bit about her story because when she arrived, she was very shocked by the food that we eat in the United States in the way that we eat it. And this was the catalyst that really spurred her life's work as an adult, so that it's really been a blessing to us all because in a way, because she now can offer us and teach us the principles of ancestral foods and intuitive eating. And currently she homesteads on occupied Abenaki land with her partner and children and is passionate about walking in the woods, writing poetry and making music, cooking seasonally, culturally appropriate foods and community. So we're not all about our work, but we can see how our work is really informs all the other aspects of our life. So thank you so much for being here, Lynsie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So you're chiming in from Vermont today on the East Coast.
That's
So we were
right.
just talking right beforehand about how I was curious about how cold it is up there, and you're having some unusually warm weather for this time of year in Vermont. So I know it's kind of one of those situations where you feel like, oh, I'm glad it's warmer, but I'm afraid that because it's so much warmer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would love to just start with just a little bit about your story because you grew up in Italy and it had the culture is very different and its view around food and nourishment. So can you tell us what it was like to grow up in Italy?
And I didn't really realize the privilege I had growing up in an intact food culture until I left. And I was so blessed to be, one of a big family. Of course, I still am. There are 55 of us. My dad is one of 8 children. And we spent a lot of our summers and winter breaks up in the Dolomite Mountains, where my grandmother had a home that had really room for all of us, which was incredible. And she was, getting us up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the wild edible and medicinal mushrooms are our best, and we would, my cousins and I, all suit up and get our gardening and harvesting baskets and head out into the woods and collect all kinds of things, make medicine with her. Of course, we always made all of our food from scratch, had a huge root cellar that we were filling with lacto-fermented veggies and elderberry syrup and other medicinal extracts and dried mushrooms. And we would make sausage and bread and, you name it, right? That root cellar was always stocked. And we really ate from the gardens and in community. And we learned about gleaning at a young age. My grandmother's neighbor had an apricot orchard, which in that dry mountain climate, apricots do thrive, which is amazing. And he always let us and the drops, the apricots that he wasn't going to sell at market. So we would pick all the drops and learn how to cut out the little bad spots and make jam with my grandmother, and just honey from the beehives and apricots all cooked down. This is kind of how I grew up, right? And it's not as though I lived in some mythical reality or I'm like 150 years old. I came to the States 30 years ago. And this is very much still how my family lives. And yes, supermarkets have come to Italy. McDonald's certainly has come to Italy. However, the kind of local small food system remains intact, right? Folks are still going to the butcher shop, going to the bread shop, going to the farmer to pick up milk, going to the market to get fruits and veggies. This is very common. Italian people do tend to shop most days to get a few provisions to complement what they already have. So I feel really fortunate that I was raised not only with the whole foods, seasonal eating, kind of food as medicine culture, but also with the folk herbalist culture. I think that's something that not all Italians have. So I kind of had that double blessing that I was able to carry forward. And I feel like I lived a really wonderful and charmed childhood, not without its challenges, of course, but true nourishment was really readily available to me, and I'll always be grateful for that privilege, because it created the foundation for my body to be able to overcome many challenges in my adult life.
And so how old were you when you came to the United States?
I was almost 13.
Mm-hmm. And so you had already established, a really great foundation for your body, eating these amazing foods and, culturally appropriate foods. And so when you came to the United States, what was your experience like as a child seeing?
Well, first of all, and I emigrated to Kansas City, right? Which is a wonderful place. And I have been back since high school, and it's thriving arts culture there, and certainly food culture. However, I was noticing things like suburbia that wasn't really a paradigm for me, and just folks, cultivating a lot of beautiful landscaping plants, right? But no food crops. That felt really confusing to me. And I experienced my first supermarket, bright lights, everything is in shiny packages, even the fruit and vegetables were in packages. And I just remember going in there with my parents and saying, well, where's the food? We need food. And I couldn't find any food. I felt really confused. And the store was really large. And I feel like we kept getting turned around. It was very disconcerting. I also didn't really grow up going to restaurants. My dad would always say, why would you go out to eat when you can make it better at home? And I think that's a very typically Italian and potentially European way of seeing things. And sort of the way we went out to eat, which is actually something that's happening in that northern part of Italy at this time of year, is that we would go participate in farm feasts. So it's this concept called, it's a German word, Torgeln, which means gathering. So at this time of year, farmers are gathering the harvest. They're making their own wine, they're gathering all of their wild game, their rabbit and their venison, gathering all of their vegetable crops and dairy. And they open up their farms to feasts, and people can come from the community, contribute, help them bring in some of their harvest, help them cook, and then everybody sits down together at long tables for an extended 3 or 4 hour feast. And it's a beautiful celebration, right? The actual true meaning of Thanksgiving, not tied up in white supremacy culture and the myth of Thanksgiving that lives in the United States. These are truly beautiful feasts. And that was our version of a restaurant, I guess you would say, right?
Wow.
So then in the US, I also encountered restaurants, and I was very confused by those as well. And it's like, why were the service people not sitting with the eating people? And, kinds of culture shock experiences related to food.
It's such a beautiful, eye-opening experience in the sense that, okay, where, like when you first walked into that big supermarket and you're like, where is the food? Like, we walk into a supermarket, like it's all around you, but you as a young child, before you've had all of this conditioning come in, you're like, where is the food? Because it doesn't even look or feel real to you. And then this idea of going into a restaurant and being curious, like, okay, why isn't everyone sitting down and eating together in community, which is, I had never even thought about that until you mentioned that. It's like, okay, we're really missing out on the opportunity to sit and commune together and be really together, like everybody, the people that have prepared the food, the people that have harvested it, the people that, are consuming it, or, everyone seems to be contributing in some way to the experience, which seems very beautiful, a bit idyllic, and also nearly impossible to implement in the United States. So, with that in mind, when you're coming here and you're experiencing this huge contrast at a young age, and I'm sure I don't know what you studied in college, but I know that you've had this deep background in nutrition and Ayurveda. And would you say that these experiences are what really catalyzed you to share this knowledge?
1000%. Yes. Already in high school, I was, kind of going through the process of assimilation to protect myself from a ton of judgment from American students. Not to judge them, I think they just didn't really understand, right? What it was like to come from a different culture. And as I did make friends, the first thing to do was invite them over to my house. I asked my parents, is it okay if I invite these like 5 or 6 people over? I want to cook for them. I want to show them, how to make gnocchi, or ravioli, or, braised beef. It's like nobody knows how to make any of this stuff, and my parents were very kind and thoughtful and said, of course, have them over, and we would all cook together. And so I feel like my food activism and my desire to instill food sovereignty and control over food in my community really started in high school.
And so where would we even begin? Because, I'm listening to your story, like, oh, it just sounds so beautiful. But, our lifestyle in the United States is just one where we are really overworking and overdoing. We have hold so far away from like real community. And we live in a culture that perpetuates isolation and separation and competition, and which is not one of where we, sit and share and contribute in a way that feels really enriching. So where would we even begin? And like, where would we even supermarkets are the thing, like, and it's very difficult to find even high quality food in the high quality food supermarkets. So where do we begin?
I love that question. The entry are a little different for everybody, depending on where you live. And likely you have a market somewhere near you. Go online, look it up through your state organizing association, or just search for farmers markets in your area. There is definitely one. Create family culture, community culture around going to the farmers market. You can get fruits and veggies there from local farmers. You can also get food, so it's fun, right? Let's go to the farmers market and get a snack, right? My kids are obsessed with that because they have their favorite croissants that they get only at the farmers market. Meet farmers. If you end up making a connection with a farmer, ask them if you can come and help out on the farm, in exchange for some produce, if that's something that sounds interesting or appealing to you. Try to relocalize your own community's food system. Are you connected with somebody in your neighborhood? Is there ever an exchange that could happen between a couple of households where, say, on a Saturday or Sunday, you make a pot of soup and they make a pot of soup and everybody comes over to your house? you eat together, and then you get quarts of the soup that they made, they take home 2 quarts of the soup that you made, then everybody has some soup for the week. You had a community time where you got to eat together, and you created some sort of connection around food, around understanding what your food preferences are, what your neighbors' preferences are. Could you create a food swap? Right? You end up going apple picking and picking a ton of apples and making all this applesauce. And do you have somebody in your community who loves growing food and, you know, grew a ton of cabbage and made sauerkraut? Well, maybe you can trade a jar of applesauce for a jar of sauerkraut and create a little bit of connection around food. One more idea. Do you know anything about your heritage or your ancestry? Can you find out where grandparents came from, where parents came from? Can you find out what foods are indigenous to those places and start saying, oh yeah, I do really like artichokes, or yeah, I do really like potatoes, and start kind of bringing those foods intentionally into your cooking.
And there's a couple of things that come to mind around this topic. And I want to definitely jump into this idea around, well, first of all, I don't like to cook. And I feel
Yes.
so, yeah, and I really feel so overwhelmed right now in my life. Even going to the grocery store feels overwhelming. And I know that there's a lot of other women out there that are householder, caretakers, and like, what do we do? Like, it just feels like too much. Everything right now feels like too much. So even pulling together a meal. I mean, I just had a couple people over for dinner the other night. It wasn't a communal meal, which probably would have made it a lot easier, but I was exhausted preparing it. I felt like I had to take half the day off to do it. And it was beautiful, but I was exhausted from it because I'm already exhausted. So I need things to be really super, super simple. So maybe we can talk about that when we come back. And also this idea, what you just brought up, maybe start to think about the fad diet culture and how looking into our ancestral lineage to see what are the foods that are right for us, because one diet does not fit all. So, okay, now I'm getting a cue that we have to go to break after dumping all of that on you. So so this is what we're going to be talking to Lisa Mase when we come back from break. So definitely hang out and wait for us to come back and dive into these topics. And while you're taking a moment, just consider being a sponsor of this show. This is a show for women, by women, and we're bringing really incredible topics to the table for discussion. So if you're really inspired and you want to see this show grow and continue, then reach out to me at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com, and I can share with you the benefits of being a sponsor besides helping to keep the show running. I'll talk to you. We'll be back in a second.
All right, good job. We're all clear. All right, so occasionally, sporadically while you're talking, Lisa, we're getting you're kind of cutting out a little bit. I think it's the internet connection speed issue that we're having. Are you on Wi-Fi or are you a hard line?
I'm both. I'm plugged into a router.
Okay, well, could you check to see if you're running off of Wi-Fi instead of the hard line? Because that might help.
Yeah, I'll double check, and I'm pretty sure.
Generally, you have
Yep.
to have Wi-Fi turned off if you're plugged in.
Yep, I'm on the router.
Okay, yeah, because you're definitely having a lot of like little, couple second cutouts, like where you're kind of we lose you there for a bit.
Shoot, sorry.
Okay, you don't have anything else running that might be using up internet speed?
I'm just looking to see if things running in the background. But I don't think so.
Okay.
We've already had her go out and come back in just to
Yep.
see if that helped, but
Yeah, seems like everything in the background is shut down.
Okay.
any other suggestions, Matt?
The only other thing that we could do is turn off the video and see if that will help save on some of the bandwidth. But I know you like to record video, so.
Mm-hmm. So how bad does it sound on your end?
Well, it should sound the same that you should be hearing the same thing I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this, yeah.
Well, I do like to record video, but to offer video clips, but if the video clips aren't great, we could always create an audio clip. What do you feel like, Lisa?
I'm open to whatever's best. It doesn't sound terrible on my end, and I'm not a sound engineer, so
Yeah.
I'm open to whatever you all think.
What do you think, Matt?
Well, yeah, it's you know, like I said, it's we're getting, you know, we're losing a little bit here and there, so it's really up to you. If you want to, if you're willing to sacrifice those moments for the video, then we could leave video on.
Yeah, let's just leave the video on because I like to be able to see my guest, and I'll just, explain to people when they're listening that we're having a little tech issues, and that's not
Okay.
uncommon.
All right, and we are good. We are coming back here in just a few seconds.
Thank you.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello and welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. This is Lynsie McKeown, and we are here today with Lisa Mase. And we've been having an incredible conversation already, and we're going to dive right back in because I don't want to lose any time, because it's important for us to talk about how fad diets do not fit all of us, and that how they are not healthy for us. And also how can we create some simplicity around creating meals and coming into community and really deeply nourishing ourselves. And just so everyone knows, we're having just a little bit of tech issues today. So if we are kind of jumping in and out, then please just stay with us, because it's just part of living in a modern world with technology. Sometimes we have tech issues. So if you can be patient with us and still be with us, that would be great. So Lisa, are we ready for this next piece?
Definitely.
Okay.
And I love the question of how to nourish ourselves and how to keep it simple when I feel so full. And when that nervous system overwhelm feels like it's dominating and draining us and exhausting us.
And I am
Something
right there in this moment. So I really want to hear
Yes,
this.
I hear you. Something I suggest to a lot of folks, whether or not you like to cook, and I totally understand and respect that people get sick of cooking or don't enjoy it, is to get an Instant Pot. It's really kind of like the fanciest version of a slow cooker that's out there. And the thing I like about it is that you can make virtually anything you want really quickly and easily. So, if you want to make where you would have to saute some veggies and then add other ingredients, bring it to a boil, the Instant Pot does all of that for you. It sautés, it brings to a boil, it cooks slowly, it does all the things. It's fairly affordable. It's under $100. And you can literally throw things into a pot the night before or in the morning, whenever you feel like you have time. And then at the end of the day, you have a meal, or the next morning or the next day at lunch, you have a meal ready for you. I have lots of recipes for slow cooker ideas on my website, harmonizedliving.com. There are tons of recipes out there in general. And I think that can be a really great tool. I also think having a rice cooker where you can put in any grain, not just rice, you know, quinoa, millet, barley, anything you can think of, any grains that you enjoy. And you can have hot grains ready for you as well. So really simplifying what you want to prepare in terms of food, I think is step number one. And using a lot of different spices to add flavor and interest, so that things, you know, feel easy to prepare, but also feel flavorful, I think is key. And then trying to set aside some time during time off for some batch cooking, right? So saying, okay, I am going to make a big batch of soup that I can keep in the fridge, or I am going to make a big casserole that I can keep in the fridge and reheat. And I'll spend a couple hours over the weekend doing that, right? We also have a lot of great options for grocery delivery services. Getting your groceries delivered can sometimes feel like it takes out the stress. Yes, you don't all everything you request. Yes, sometimes you get weird substitutions for things. And sometimes that feels a little bit more manageable than actually going to the store, getting everything, getting it in the car, unloading, right?
Getting lost
And then,
in massive supermarket.
oh,
My God.
yes. And
I
so
walk into those
ordering,
things and I feel like a deer in headlights. I feel like my
of
nervous system
course,
is on overload.
of course. And sometimes just avoiding those spaces can actually feel healing in and of itself. And then making a meal plan for the week, you know, as you're making a meal plan, also writing your shopping list, then going online and ordering your groceries. And right. And in our household, we have little kids, and our meal plans tend to be sort of repetitive. And that's something that works, you know, like every Monday we have rice and beans, and we might add in, you know, different kinds of raw chopped veggies to that. Or if somebody had time to roast some sweet potatoes, we might have that along with it, right? We might have some avocado. So different ways of having kind of a base meal. And
that
then
meal
adding
sounds so
in,
simple too. It's like just the base is so simple. Like we can all make rice and
is.
beans, and then you can just add other things into it to change it up and make it even more nutritious. So it
That's
doesn't have to be
right.
a big, elaborate, you know, meal.
No, it can be so nutritious. And something I love too with that kind of meal is that you have the base, and you know, you can literally throw rice in your rice cooker and then open a can or two of beans, drain, rinse, throw them in with the hot rice, mix it up, the beans get heated up. That's it, you're done, right? And then it's like one of my kids throws avocados at the wall if they even think about eating them. And then the other one would eat like 5 avocados if they could, right? So it's like the avocados are on the table. Whoever wants them can have them. The cheese slices are on the table, right? Create your own ideal plate, which I think is also a part of raising children and supporting grown-ups who have choice around food, because I think diet culture creates a restrictive mentality. The clean plate club concept creates this mentality around stepping away from hunger and satiety cues, hunger and fullness cues, which I think then can lead into disordered eating, can lead into diet culture. So like, this is what's on the table. People choose, everybody gets to feel empowered around some creativity within the foundation of their meal, whether it's rice and beans or lentil soup, or, you know, build your own taco night or pasta night, right? And there's happening with a gargantuan effort.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And so let's talk a little bit more about the fad diet culture and this whole like one size fits all approach, and how that isn't actually supportive of our own ancestry and our own DNA and what would be actually healthy for us.
Absolutely. I kind of like to say that for every process out there, there's a fad diet. to match, right? Because, it's trying to restore balance, right? However, what's happening is that both ends of the spectrum are a little bit extreme. Processed food isn't actually food. The body doesn't recognize it as food because and the body needs, the bran and the germ that cover the outside of a rice kernel in order to be able to digest that carbohydrate, for example, right? So white, unless it's inherently white, is problematic. So processed foods are just inherently harder to digest. Digestive system gets weakened, and then a fad diet comes out to say, I'm going to help you restore your metabolism and strengthen your digestion. When ultimately are all bioengineered, and the foods that are ideal for digestion programmed into our DNA to be most digestible. And most of us are a mosaic of many different cultural backgrounds, right? So a lot of people ask me, well, how do I determine my ideal ancestral foods, right? You can do an ancestry test, a test, and really figure out what percentage is Welsh or Polish or African, right? And you can also tune in to those different foods from those different cultural traditions and say, sauerkraut really does work for me. And that may be part of my Polish heritage. And I'm speaking for myself right now. But potatoes, they're from my Welsh heritage, but I don't really do well with potatoes. I feel kind of bloated and gassed after I eat potatoes. So it's like, okay, I might just have a little more of the Polish in me than the Welsh, right? And I think that tuning in is ultimately a way to determine what's best for us. And all traditional nutritional philosophies in a certain way as a therapeutic health intervention, right? Even the Mediterranean diet with which I grew up talks about, okay, in the spring and fall, let's simplify what we eat, right? Just veggies and grains and legumes, beans and lentils for a week or so, just to kind of the system reset, keep it so that the body doesn't have to think so hard, right, about what it's doing in terms of digestion. However, a therapeutic dietary intervention isn't a way of life. It's about a moment in time. It's about saying, I want health outcome, to feel lighter and like my digestion is moving the way that I want it to, or to get over a virus like the common cold, right? Helping my body to detoxify or to reset and rebalance hormones during hormonal transitions. So many examples, right, of when we could therapeutically use food and a really specific way of eating to help restore balance, restore wellness. But again, not a way of life and different for everybody.
And I like how you bring in food for healing instead of just going and taking another prescription drug. I'm not saying that all prescription drugs are bad. We need them for certain things, but we tend to just automatically go to the drugstore and grab something off the shelf when we're not feeling well. And then that creates oftentimes more toxicity or disrupts our gut health, which is the center of our immune system, really. But if we can approach it from eating the foods that will really support our immune system and see how that does for us, like really heal through food, I feel like it would just really set our whole body up for greater healing or greater, health in the long run. So we wouldn't be getting as sick as often because we're not healing ourselves with things that are actually causing more issues later on down the line. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think you are right on. And, the gut is the seat of immunity. It's the innate immune system, the first line of defense. And it's also home to neurotransmitters that secrete all of our mood modulating hormones. Not all of them, but a large, large percent of them. So we all know when our digestion is feeling off, our mood is also off, right? And there's a very good reason for that. We know when we're trying to shift out of a certain way of eating and maybe eating less processed food, our mood gets off, right? Because the gut bacteria that loves that processed food is kind of slowly shifting into the background, but it's hungry. So it's sending messages to the brain saying, feed me, you're not giving me the sugar.
More sugar.
Exactly. And it actually only takes 2 to 3 days for that gut bacteria to get the message and say, okay, I'm taking a back seat now. But during that time period, as gut flora is resetting, there's also a reset of the neurotransmitters that secrete all of our mood modulating hormones. And so the gut is absolutely the seat of so much of what helps us be in the world and make it through our day. And I think it's so important to remember that when we're feeling off balance, mood-wise, energy-wise, the thought is, let me go to caffeine, let me go to sugar, right? Because those are comfort foods, right? However, really in those moments, the most kind of healing intervention tool is, let me go to the rice and beans, let me go to the veggies, right? All of these things that feed gut bacteria, that nourish those mood modulating neurotransmitters, and that actually do help us to heal. But that's a tricky one. That's a big hurdle. And I tend to say, if you want the chocolate, have some chocolate and have some roasted squash too, right?
Chocolate
Make it into a both
squash
and.
sounds pretty good.
So good.
Well, and I also love how you bring it back to like this such importance around the gut. And, you know, obviously you've studied Ayurvedic and I'm from the Tantra yoga lineage. So Ayurveda is a very important part of our tradition, and that this is really the seat of your power. And it has so much wisdom there. And we talk about this having to get that digestion, that digestive fire really strong, not just so that we can digest our foods, but when that's also strong, then your mood is strong. Then you are able to process all the stuff that's coming in around you, which is a lot. And you're actually able to really stand in a much more powerful, clear way. Did you want to speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. So it's really all about nervous system modulation, right? And that digestive fire, that Agni is the Sanskrit word for that comes through the Ayurvedic tradition, is really the fire that fuels our glands, our hormonal system, right? The glandular system in Ayurveda and yogic tradition is known as the chakras, for the wheels, right? So that keeps the wheels turning, it keeps us digesting our food, it keeps us producing energy, and it helps our nervous system to regulate so that we're not anxiously grabbing at foods or experiences, emotions, but we're able to kind of pause, center, and say, okay, now what do I really need to be nourished?
What do I really need to be nourished? Which comes back to that when we did the drop-in, like, how do we know? And we have to really be able to set ourselves up for that wisdom to come through. And we don't set ourselves up very well if we're constantly pulling from, you know, resources such as caffeine and sugar and packaged foods. And, you know, you mentioned something about how, you know, this is the seat that can help regulate our hormones. And, you know, a lot of our listeners are in perimenopause or postmenopausal states. And we would love to talk to you. I'm in perimenopause and it's, you know, it's an interesting ride. I can tell you that. So I would love just to be able to talk a little bit like what are some of the things that we can start to feed our bodies that will help with some of the symptoms that come up, you know, the brain fog, the hot flashes, just sometimes I feel like I'm not even in my own body at times. Like I'm having more difficulty to tap into the intuitive wisdom that I'm so used to tapping into. So can we talk about that when we come back from this short break?
Absolutely.
Okay. Great. So if you're listening, please join us after this short break so that we can continue this amazing conversation. And we'll talk about how we can start to regulate our hormones. And I'm sure this doesn't just apply to women that are in perimenopause, because if you're a woman, you have a lot of hormones that fluctuate every month. So stay tuned and we'll be right back with Lisa Mase.
All right, great job. All clear. Back in about 2.
Okay, great. How are you feeling, Lisa?
Great.
Good.
How about you?
I love this. It feels so good. I mean, I really, really love this this topic, and it's just such an
I hope
important
I'm
one to
giving
have.
folks, yeah, I hope I'm giving folks some actionable tools.
Yeah, I mean, I love the piece about how to keep things simple, and I also just want to make sure that we bring in, how they can. I was looking at your website, and you have so much information there, for so many ideas for recipes that you're just offering for free, and other things that are low investment and also higher investment that if people want to take a deep dive in, they can. So they have those resources, because sometimes they're like, I don't know what to cook. I don't know where to go, but you have your website is so full of information. So I'd love to bring that in and talk about your book, of course.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to talk about in the last segment. So we can, just touch in just briefly on the hormonal thing so that we have time to make sure we talk about your book as well as the resources that you have on your website for people. Because I always want to make sure people have a place to land to get the resources they need.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll need 1 minute to 30 seconds at the end to, like, when you see that they're in the chat that we have 1 minute, I'll need that minute to wrap up, or else they'll just.
Perfect.
Okay, we're going to break now.
Empowerment.com.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. And we're having a conversation around getting deeply nourished through whole foods and really learning how to listen to our intuitiveness around food. And before we left for break, we were diving into what do we do with all these hormones in a very transitionary time in our life. For me, I'm in perimenopause and having all the things. And I can't wait to hear from Lisa. What the heck do I do about this? Help me, woman.
Oh my goodness.
This is the benefit
Actually,
of being
so
the host of a show. I get to ask all the things that I need. So please help me.
I love it. I love it. And I think that this is something, as you said before the break, that folks are experiencing even prior to going through this particular hormonal transition. So there is an incredible and time-tested tradition of using seeds to regulate reproductive hormone cycles. So if you feel like you're experiencing a shorter cycle, which is looking like low progesterone, which is what heads us towards menopause, really increasing your intake of sesame and sunflower seeds. And I like to do this through making little energy bites, right? So grinding up sesame and sunflower seeds in an espresso bean grinder, or getting tahini, sesame seed butter and sunflower seed butter, mixing them together, with a little raw honey, some shredded coconut, if you like that, and always including ground flaxseed meal, because the lignans in the flaxseed, the liver to detoxify excess hormones. So flaxseed, flaxseed, flaxseed. That's really the name of the game. And those sesame and sunflower seeds, during the second half of the cycle post-ovulation, can be really supportive with any PMS symptoms, with stretching out a shorter cycle, and with just dealing with all of the emotionality that comes with hormonal fluctuations. During the first half of the cycle, just during bleeding and right after, focusing on pumpkin seeds and also more flaxseed meal, flaxseed.
Flaxseed.
Yeah. Can be really helpful. And again, using the energy bites, I'll do almond butter and ground pumpkin seeds and flaxseed meal during the first half. And then in those energy bites, you can go on my website to get these recipes, but I really like to include cinnamon because that's a blood glucose stabilizer, right? So we're not having any kind of erratic peaks and valleys in our blood glucose, which can lead to crankiness and hot flashes and insomnia. And sounds appealing, including herbs as well. Red clover flower is the ultimate kind of perimenopause, menopause harmonizer. Drinking that as tea, taking it as a tincture, a medicinal herbal extract.
So Lisa, I
as
want to
much as
interrupt
you
you just
want.
for a second because you went out just for a moment. I don't want anyone to miss that. Did you say red clover flower? But
That's
not
right.
like as a flower, not as a flour meal, like
Correct.
FLOWER. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And red clover is super common. It's, some people even consider it a weed. And it's incredible at helping with hormonal regulation. The other one is Vitex, also known as chicory.
Chicory?
Thing to do with Vitex, chaste
Vitex.
tree berry.
Okay.
Yeah. And taking that as a tincture or add activity. So what we call ancillaric in herbalism, meaning if I have too much of a hormone, the Vitex goes in there and says, let's turn down the volume on. And if I have too little of one, Vitex says, let's kind of punch that up, right? There aren't any foods that actually contain estrogen or progesterone, and all of those foods and herbs give the body the tools that it needs to regulate those.
So that's beautiful. Again, these foods are just so like food is healing if we understand what foods to take into our bodies. That if we give it the right environment, the right foods, then the body has this wisdom to understand how to heal, to regulate its hormonal system. So I love that. And I appreciate you sharing the red clover, flaxseed, and Vitex. And so if people really want to like dive in more deeply into this work with you, I mean, your website is so full of so much information. You have recipes, you have movement practices. All of this is for free. And then you also have mini courses that are like, and recipes that, like a 7-day reset. And you also have a 28-day meal plan, as well as some other coaching that you can do for the individual, which is really powerful. And it's a beautiful website. So tell us where your website is. It's harmonized-living.com. Is that correct?
That's right. Harmonized-living.com. And yeah, if you're feeling overwhelmed even by what to cook, getting that meal plan to guide you through a month meal, even broken down, for this time of day. All of the prep sessions are ideally less than 30 minutes and something to go off of and a starting point to then pick out your favorites and create your own meal plans.
Yeah, I love that. Just to give you a starting point. So I was looking at it before the show, like, ooh, I want that. I want that. I want that. This looks, if it's easy and it looks yummy, I'll do it. So and tell us, you have like, this inspiration. I think you're in the middle of writing a book. Am I correct?
I am. Yes. Very exciting.
And I know
Oh,
go ahead. Tell us when it's going to be out.
It'll be out in 2023. Hopefully, in the middle of the year through Inner Tradition, the Healing Arts Press. And if you're excited, if you want to pre-order the book, you can just sign up for my newsletter on my website. It's a great way to get info about classes, about the book, and to get recipes. I send it out twice a month with just wellness tools, recipes, inspiration to keep you going.
So twice a month, you're getting recipes and inspiration to keep going on this journey, which is great because I'm always at a loss. I was like, what am I going to cook now? But if I'm getting it in my inbox, it's just great. I'm like, oh, well, let's see what's in this. Now, I know when we talked a few weeks ago, one-on-one, you hadn't come up with a name or a title for the book yet. Have you landed on one yet? Am I allowed to ask that?
You are, and we're still working on it. My editor and I are getting closer, but we're not there yet. So consider that this book is about ancestral eating. It's about learning the tools to really listen to your body's own cues for nourishment, because our body's always giving us messages about what it needs, and we really ultimately need to listen. It's about food sovereignty, taking control over your food, understanding your heritage, finding ways to really dive into that. And it also has a lot of recipes and meal plans and inspiration from a lot of traditional healing modalities. So I hope that it's something that's inspiring and engaging and a tool so that ultimately I can make myself obsolete.
Yeah, and I love that when you told me that several weeks ago that you would really, like, your goal is to be obsolete. And so it's not about, and I think that's just such a beautiful way of reframing things in our culture that's all about what can I get? What can I, from working with people? Instead, you're offering this beautiful service so that eventually one day people won't even need you. Instead, in our culture, we're like, okay, we want to make everyone need me forever. I don't ever want. And so this is really, and part of the show is about talking about the rise of the feminine. And this is a very feminine approach to, like, how can we really bring in deep nourishment and beauty in a way that we're living in community, and we're no longer in this competition with each other, but we're serving each other and helping each other heal and transform and thrive. So I really appreciate you sharing that and being brave enough to say, I don't want people to need me. I want people to have their own sovereignty and be obsolete one day, because that means that I've done my work.
That's absolutely right. Totally agree.
Yeah. So we only have a few minutes left of the show. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would really like to share with our listeners?
I think just kind of to recap, if you're feeling overwhelmed, like it's so challenging to make food choices that are supportive for you, for your loved ones, start by going back to things that are really simple, right? Like if you know that people in your family like rice, start making rice more often. If you love roasting root vegetables, beets, carrots, parsnips, sweet potatoes, make a tray of roasted root vegetables, right? A little oil and salt in the oven, 45 minutes, you can walk away while they're roasting. If you know that people in your family or in your household like chicken, just get a chicken, shove it in the oven, 20 minutes per pound, it's done. Start really simple and, try things out like making a soup and you'll find that your palate will adjust and you'll get to that place where it doesn't feel as overwhelming.
Yeah. And so, Lisa, the last question I have for you is, what does thriving mean to you?
I think it's really from a system perspective, a place of feeling like I am here, I am grounded when all of the changes and challenges and surprises of the day kind of come my way. I have enough resource inside myself to pause and say, okay, how am I going to embrace this situation as opposed to reacting to it and creating more stress in my body? How am I going to embrace it with my big loving hug of who I am, and then figure out what to do from that place of taking care of myself first?
I love that. Like, you are just grounded and centered and can really just respond and not react to life. So thank you so much for that. So we've been listening and having a conversation with Lisa Mase, and definitely go to her website, harmonized-living.com, so you can get recipes and some support from her. She's amazing, and I'm going to be doing the same. And just know that we have this show every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. on the Voice America Empowerment channel. And if you love the show and you want to see the show thrive and continue on, then consider being a sponsor of the show. Just reach out to me at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com, and we can chat about how you can support us and the benefits that you'll receive as being a sponsor of the show. So until next time, my friends, many blessings and much love.
All right, great job today. Good show. We're all clear.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome as well. Have a great rest of your day. And Lynsie, I'll talk to you next week.
Okay, great.
All right,
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, so we are still recording and going live in the Facebook group. I'm just going to jump over the Facebook group. Do you still have a couple more minutes, Lisa?
I do.
Okay, let's just see if anyone's over there. Da, 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 da. Okay. So we don't have any questions right now. Sometimes the questions come in later because of the timing of the day. So I believe you're in the Facebook group. Are you, Lisa?
I don't know if I am. I'll
if you're
put
not,
them there.
I'll add you so that when the questions come in, then you can be available to answer them if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank
Okay.
you.
And is there anything that you want to share with the women in the Facebook group that we haven't already shared on in this conversation? Or are we feeling good?
I'm feeling good, and I really need folks to reach out. You can all have time to chat with me. It's totally free and there's no obligation. Try to give folks some tools and tips specific to them when we have our chat. So please take advantage of that. I love talking with people about what's going on for them. So I look forward to hearing from you.
And it's so interesting because we all, I offer a complimentary call as well. And it's just like so few people take us up on it. I feel like I don't know how it is on your end. And it's like, it really is just to have a conversation. If there is, if you want to learn more and you want to work with us, then that's an option, but there's never any pressure. This is just about having a conversation. And so that women can start to feel held and supported. I know you don't just work with women, but it's just like, if you need support, just reach out. Sometimes it's just in one small conversation, there can be such a big shift without a big commitment. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And just to know that there are people out there that really care. Like, I know you really care. You're so, this has been a passion of yours since you were 12, 13 years old.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And really all my life, I grew up cooking and making medicine, and that was always my favorite thing to do with my family. So
okay, I'm coming to Vermont.
Great.
So you can cook for me.
Down. Come on up.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop record and end the Facebook Live because I would love just to have a little conversation with you aside, if that's okay.
Great.
Okay.